This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. Let me read you a quote from a new filing by the Special Counsel in Lago and the Trump prosecution. There is overwhelming evidence that when Trump holds up public servants for sustained inflammatory attacks, a predictable torrent of threats of retribution and violence follows. Trump is well aware of this dynamic, and it has been the subject of extensive litigation, court findings, and reporting. And yet he has made no effort to discourage these threats and harassment, despite knowing that his followers listen to him like no one else. The only reasonable inference, which Trump has made no effort to dispel, is that he tacitly welcomes and encourages the threats that some of his followers inevitably visit on those whom he targets. That is a new supplemental file by Special Counsel Jack Smith and his office to try to convince Aileen Cannon she seems to have made up her mind already that she's not going to gag Donald Trump no matter what. And now in the new supplemental filing, they methodically, the Special Counsel's office lays out all of the call and response. Donald Trump putting a target on the back of public servants, civil servants, judges, prosecutors, and agents, and what happens in terms of violence and violent attacks, including to assassinate them, that follows, all in an effort that should be relatively easy in front of any other judge to stop Donald Trump from claiming in violent vitriol, in rhetoric that is defamatory and untrue, that the FBI, under the guidance of Joe Biden, was operating a assassination squad to take out Donald Trump and his family when FBI agents, who always have to be armed, were executing the search warrant in coordination with the Trump lawyers and Trump himself, while Trump was thousands of miles away in New Jersey. I mean, Trump acts like he could have been at Mar-a-Lago in August 2 years ago, and that's a lie. He's never in Florida in August. He's always at Bedminster, and they didn't even leave it to chance, the FBI and the Department of Justice. They coordinated with Donald Trump's lawyers and his family and his staff to make sure that Donald Trump was nowhere around, not Barron, not Melania, not Donald Trump, not anybody. And so for him to claim that the FBI was going to assassinate him is only for one purpose: to put a target on the back of the FBI and to create an aura of fear and retribution, that his followers and listeners pick up that call, that clarion call, and then try to act out in this way. I'm not worried necessarily about Donald Trump using one of his 3 handguns that apparently now have been turned over because he's a felon. I'm worried about his half-baked, half-cocked followers making good on their threats to assassinate these people. And that's what the Department of Justice is concerned about. And that's what this Article 3 federal judge Cannon should be concerned about. Let me read you from the supplemental brief that was just filed, where the Department of Justice and the Special Counsel's Office outlines 5 major areas, at least, in which assassination threats and violent threat levels go up exponentially because of Donald Trump's comments. On page 2, they say 3 days after the indictment in the D.C. election interference case, and 1 day after Trump made his appearance, in other words, his official appearance in the case as part of being booked and processed, Trump posted on his social media, "If you go after me, I'm coming after you." Now, the Department of Justice quickly dispatches and destroys Trump's newfound argument that he was talking about the Koch brothers and other rhino Republicans that were against Donald Trump, and wasn't talking about the things that just happened to him with the judge and the prosecutors. And they point out that even if that is what Donald Trump really believes, that's not what happened on the ground. The following day after Trump posted, "If you go after me, I'm coming after you," this is from page 2, one of Trump's supporters called the chambers of Judge Chutkan and said, quote, "Hey, you stupid slave N-word," and then threatened to kill anyone who went after President Trump. The caller went on to say, quote, "If Trump doesn't get elected in 2024, we are coming to kill you, so tread lightly, B-word. You will be targeted personally, publicly, your family, all of it." Even after this death threat was publicly reported and discussed in court filings in the case, Trump continued attacking that judge, calling her a true Trump hater who is incapable of giving me a fair trial, and openly admitted she's running election interference against Trump, all a lie. In January 2024, that judge, after those comments were made, was reportedly swatted, meaning the SWAT team was sent there by someone reporting that a crime was in progress in order to try to harm the judge. The next thing they note is that in the civil case in New York, that's the civil fraud case before Judge Engoron, Trump frequently attacked that presiding judge as a vicious political hack whose intentional and criminal interference with the presidential election of 2024 must be stopped. He called the wife a Trump-hating wife. He posted pictures of the crooked and highly partisan law clerk that worked for the judge, whom he identified by a photo, and called and defamed her by calling her the girlfriend of one of Trump's political opponents. Just following these attacks, on a daily basis, the judge and his staff, this is page 3 of the filing, are being inundated with hundreds of harassing and threatening phone calls. They are serious and credible, not hypothetical and speculative. The threats against the clerk and the judge increased exponentially, requiring gag orders to stop the death threats. In the criminal case in New York, led by Alvin Bragg's Manhattan District Attorney's Office, Trump attacked the district attorney as a racist, a thug, and an animal as he tries to dehumanize his opponent, especially somebody of color. Called him a degenerate psychopath, human scum, posted a picture of Donald Trump with a baseball bat next to the head of Alvin Bragg, and said that he's doing the work of anarchists and the devil, and he's worse than the Gestapo. Following that, the volume of threatening, harassing, or offensive phone calls to the district attorney's office increased significantly, exceeding the capacity of the investigators detailed to the office. Many of these included assassination threats, and he was sent a white powder and a note, including images of the DA and Donald Trump with the words, "You'll be sorry." Another person who described himself as a MAGA Trumper, page 4 of this filing, threatened to kill the district attorney and others, and then pointed a gun at FBI agents when they came to arrest him, resulting in a fatal shootout. You had a MAGA Trumper who was shot and killed during an attempt to arrest him because he pointed a gun at the FBI. I had to repeat that one. In the wake, and then another example, in the wake of the 2020 election, Trump used his Twitter account to target a city election commissioner, who we're not going to identify again, we're not going to out again, as the commissioner later testified to the Jan 6 committee after the president tweeted at me by name. The threats became more specific, more graphic against me, my family, with pictures of the family, their home. That is what changed with a tweet. And so, against that backdrop, this is the 4th time the Department of Justice has tried to remind Aileen Cannon, who doesn't seem interested in this at all, to be frank. And if she had been, she would have had this hearing 3 weeks ago. She said they said on page 5, against this backdrop, it is apparent that Trump's recent false and inflammatory claim that the FBI agents who executed the search warrant at Mar-a-Lago were out to kill him and endanger his family forcibly exposed those agents to the very sorts of threats and harassment that has been visited on his other targets. I mean, do you think even the judge will think it's interesting, at least for the gag order, that when they executed an arrest warrant on another person who made threats against the DA, that person raised his gun against the FBI and ended up being killed in the process? So, look, we got the filing. I'm reading from it. What's going to happen next? It's now fully briefed. The judge has at least 4 major issues on her plate right now. One, is she going to suppress evidence that was properly collected during the execution of the search warrant? In other words, all the boxes and the up to 40 classified top secret documents that were not properly returned to the American people, which is the foundation of the espionage and obstruction of justice case. Is she going to suppress that? Is she going to suppress the testimony of the lawyer for Donald Trump, who had his attorney-client privilege stripped away from him because he participated in a fraud or crime, is his testimony, damning testimony against Donald Trump, going to come in? Is she going to dismiss the indictment because the special counsel is invalid or is improperly appointed, which is the Clarence Thomas doctrine that was just expressed to her and sent to her in a love letter? And is she going to get around to gagging Donald Trump for attacking the FBI, falsely claiming they're out to attack him? And is she ever going to set that case for trial? And all that as the watchful eyes of her bosses at the 11th Circuit and ultimate bosses at the Supreme Court keep tabs on this case, but don't do anything to intervene because they're not really allowed to at this moment. While the court system has got stuck in the mud by Donald Trump pushing it there, the American people are waiting for a verdict about whether this is a twice convicted felon or not that's running for the highest office of the land in November. And to paraphrase President Joe Biden, if the courts won't do the right thing, then the court of public opinion is going to have to step in and make their vote known in a binary way in November. Do you want a convicted felon? Do you want somebody who only escaped prosecution because he was given last-minute immunity by a right-wing MAGA Supreme Court? Do you want him to be the president of the United States with those new imperial presidential powers just granted to him by this court? Do you want Trump to be the president while this Supreme Court is in operation? Do you want to enshrine forever and memorial and bake in the 6-3 super MAGA majority of the Supreme Court? Or do you want to have it move to a 5-4 progressive liberal thinking court? These are the decisions you got to make. Aileen Cannon's not going to help you make those decisions. I got to continue to follow it on hot takes like this one at the intersection of law and politics, right here on the MeidasTouch Network. Follow me on all things social media at MS Popok. If you like my body of work, go over to the MeidasTouch YouTube, look for playlists or contributors, look for Michael Popok. You'll find my entire body of work. There's about 1,300 hot takes there as of right now. And then I do a podcast called Legal AF. Now you know why. It's on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and on audio podcast platforms of your choice, wherever you get your podcasts from. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.